Alright, so now we're ready to start grinding our bevels. Doesn't matter which side you start on. Now I've got you in tight here, so I'm going to show you how I start, and then I'm going to speed this machine up because this is hogging. So I'm going to speed the machine up and get the camera back out of my way, and I'll put a respirator on and just get this steel off of this knife. Alright, so at this point, you see we're building up some heat. Some of Duncan in this water over here. But I'm getting ready to move the camera out so I can really speed this up. But you don't want to get too close to your layout line here or up here before you step up and grit, because these are deep scratches. This is a 50 grit ceramic belt. So I like to finish with an 80 grit silicon carbide that leaves a lot lighter of a scratch, because those big scratches to get out in the final finish are murder. So you try to avoid them. Don't go too far with this heavy grit belt. So. Okay, this is the knife after we've taken it up to 80 grit, and we are all but touching this top edge. So now we're going to start stepping up. The next stop is 220, and then we're going to go to 400, and that's when we go into heat treatment. And the amount of grinding that we're going to be doing at 220 and at 400, we're talking about probably less than a minute per belt. It happens quickly when you get it to this point, but these 80 grit scratches are a lot easier to make disappear than those 50 grits. Alright, so that is a 400 grit finish, and now we're ready to remove this little guide, and we're going to do the flat grinds up to this same 400 grit finish. And a couple of other operations we're going to do prior to heat treat is form our false edge. We do that with draw files and that little rotary vise I have. And then we're going to file the choil right in there to define where the cutting edge really begins. Alright, I wanted to give you a little shot of grinding the flats, and I wanted to show you one thing I do. Now this, we've already done the 220 flat grind, and we're getting ready to move up to this 400. But what I do when I step up to these finer grits, this is a gritty environment around the machine here. So there is a chance you can get some grit migration from belt to belt. And if this has a big piece of 80 grit abrasive stuck on it, well, it's going to make a scratch before it will finally fly off of there. So what I do is I use one of these crepe rubber belt cleaners, and I do it each time I put on a different grit if I'm stepping up. It's just a good little added measure. And that's all it takes to ensure that you don't get any grit migration. So I just hold it. This is where you kind of got to watch your fingertips, and I keep my fingernail constantly ground off. But there's no other real good way for me to grind the flat, so I just keep the blade itself above where my flatten is, and I just concentrate on the flat right there. And you don't push too hard, and it doesn't take too long either. That's all it's going to take, and I concentrate down on this area, because that'll show. You know, I just flip it over, do the same thing on this side. Alright, so I've moved the knife over to the rotary vise, and what I've done is when I clamped it in, I only left sticking out of the vise what I want to file. So it gives you a definite starting point. So this is a draw filing technique, and this is a single cut file. So you hold it just perpendicular to your line of cut, and you start drawing it just like that. So take a few strokes, and then I have file cards hanging up there. Then I will clean my file, and then when I get into the finishing strokes, I'll start chalking my file. And it's just a technique to keep pins from forming, because pins being made of the same material you're filing will scratch your work. Alright, so in the point where I'm going to clean this file, and there's a little bright spot right there. That's a pin, and if you can't get that out with your file card, which I just did, you can take a piece of copper and rub on there, or you can take a little pick that I have stuck over here. This right here, and that'll get in between those file teeth and really pull those pins out. But you don't want those in there when you're doing finished filing work. And now at this point is when I just take some normal street chalk and you just fill that up with the chalk, and it keeps those pins from loading up and forming, and it gives you a very nice finished cut on this. I'm not putting very much pressure on this. This is not heat treated steel. It works nice and easy at this stage. But the false edges on these little knives are not huge. It's just enough to provide a little accent, and it thins everything down up here, and it aids in penetration. And it looks kind of nice. So you want to check, and we're still clean. And you can feel it if your file is clean. It just cuts a lot better. So for your final finishing strokes, you just want to pull without moving in this direction. You just want to pull straight and let the angle of those teeth do like a shearing effect. So I'll turn that so you can see it. But that's about what we're shooting for. Just a little definition right there, just to break the corner and just give it a little bit of a stylish touch, I suppose. So I'm going to flip this thing around, do this side. Now as a final step, after I've gotten the false edge ground on both sides, I like to radius the top of that. And that is just, I've got some knife hanging out, so it's going to sing and chatter. But it's just a matter of filing at a curve. Always keep the butt of that file raised as you make your radius. And again, we're just getting rid of these corners. And right there is all it takes as far as the file work. Then I just grab a piece of shop roll and just give it a little shoe shine. There, and that just evens everything out. And then, of course, after heat treatment, we're going over every part of this knife by hand sanding. You can't do it all on a machine. All we do now that we have filed our edge, the choil right there, we're just going to rough form the cutting edge. This is fixed at a 20-degree angle, and we just kind of like when we're grinding the bevels, but we're just getting the steel out of the way so we can make a nice cutting edge. And we just do it here rather than wear out some very expensive Arkansas oil stones. So here we go. Okay, so we did that with a 220 grit, and as I said, we have the brunt of the steel out of the way, so we can go ahead and heat treat, and then we go to sharpen. It just helps it get there a little faster, and we can put a proper edge. You keep that geometry, you're going to get an edge that has the best of both worlds. You're going to have good keenness, and you're going to have enough steel in back of that edge to back it up and make it strong. So that's it. We're going to be coming back when we foil wrap. I'll see you over on the other workbench, and we'll get this thing heat treated. Alright, cut the right size piece of foil. I got the knife cleaned off, so I'm going to start by folding it in half. Then I just do this to kind of mark the ends of my knife. Then I bring this over to the edge of the table and I just form a first bend. And let's crimp it. I'll crimp it tightly all the way down. We want a nice sharp crease. Then we're going to double fold in the middle of that crease and do it again, and then that's going to make a pretty good airtight seal. And we'll do the same thing at the ends, and then we'll get this over into the furnace, and then we'll bring it out into the oil, and I'll show you that when we get there. Okay, well, this is a familiar scene. I'm going to pull this out and quench it in the oil. And one of the nice things about O1 steel is its range when you bring it up to critical temperature. It is 1450 to 1500 degrees, so it's good for giving steel. That's why I like working with it so much. But it's been at about 1475 for the right amount of time, and our oil is at 180 degrees. So out it comes, and into the quench. Just straight in, and then we start moving it around, and you just want to flush it through new oil that hasn't been superheated by coming into contact with that foil. And one of the nice things about the foil, when you bring it out of here and down into the quench, it tends to suck itself into the steel. And it really gives a good heat transmission and cools that steel down quickly like it should be. And we only go down to 180 degrees to avoid any thermal shock and stress cracks and all that sort of thing. So just pull it out a little bit, and when it stops smoking, then you've left it in long enough. It takes a little bit longer to cool with the foil wrap, but not that much longer. Alright, that's pretty good. I'll get this wiped off, and we'll see you over at the workbench when we pop this thing out. Okay, I turned on the little drawing oven in the other room a few minutes ago. It doesn't take long for it to preheat. And how I draw these, I just don't lay them in there. It's a rather small oven. I put them between two of my big refractory bricks, such as I heat treat on, and I get those warmed up, preheated. Then I put this between them so it doesn't get any reflectivity of that hot element, either above or below. So I know that it's at a 475 good steady temperature, and it's just it keeps it from overdrawing and softening on me. So we're going to cut the end of the foil pack off and see if we can't get the knife out of there. There we go. Comes out clean, no decarburization. I really like the foil wrap. I've always foil wrapped steels like D2 and anything with more chromium in it that's a true stainless. And I started foil wrapping O1, and I like the result. Man, a lot less regrind after heat treat. So yeah, the knife is nice and clean. It just has that different look. It's hardened now. I don't know why I always do this, because I've never had a piece not hardened for me. But you can tell by that skating sound on this file that we are hard. So before it cools off too much, it's not good to let O1 come to room temperature, because there's a lot of stress in this steel that we're getting ready to cook out of it at the draw. We're going to go get this in the drawing oven, and we'll get this much uploaded to YouTube. And when we come back, we're going to be putting the handles on this thing and getting it finished and mailed off to Jeremy. So we'll see you in the next video.